Today we have a big oak tree, an old oak tree. It's a Quercus agrifolia, a coast live oak. And this thing is, I'm going to guess, at least 100 years old. It measures about 5, maybe 6 feet across at the base, and the trunk diameter is, I'd say the trunk is about 5 feet across. And it's next to a house. So the house was built in the 60s and it was a big tree back then. So our job is to prune out the dead, make the tree as safe as possible, but we're dealing with problems everywhere. We're dealing with old tree work. We're dealing with, right here we got concrete in this cavity. There's decay pockets, there's old wounds. If you look up over here, there's a big old wound here. There's 3 or 4 or 5, and that one's over the house. So there's only so much that we can do on trying to make this tree reasonably safe. These are tough jobs, the client is hoping that we can trim the tree so they feel comfortable, but honestly all I can do is be more informative about the actual condition of the tree. They don't want to lose the tree. So the next thing I have to do is say, well, what if? And it's like, what if this branch over here breaks? Well, let's see, it goes up and there's 2 cables on there and it's over the corner of the house. So is that a bedroom? Yeah, he said no. So if it breaks, not good, but not as bad as it could be. And then we got this branch right here. Let's look at that one. We got a weakness, we got weakness, weakness, weakness. What happens if that one breaks? It would probably break further down here, and that'll fall on the house. How much damage will it cause? Once again, is it a bedroom there? I don't think so. This one over here, that'll take out part of the garage, if it goes. The likelihood of the whole tree going over is possible, but not that likely. We see it happen occasionally, but generally when you have an old tree like this, it starts to self-destruct. There's my son up there, Kalen, working away, trying to get some weight off of this, but leaving enough foliage up there. So, the balance is, is the weight reduction worth the effort? I believe it is. It'll make things a little bit safer. Maybe it'll prolong those branches a bit. But once again, those are all educated guesses. We can look at everything that we see. He did go out, and this cable right here is very slack. So there's another cable down over here that is kind of redundant. It's of no value whatsoever. The locations, it's another thing. If you look at these cables, they are old cables with the cable clamps, and that's not an accepted procedure for working cables. It's an old technique, and these are ancient. You can see how rusty they are. All of the, whether they're J-lags or whatever kind of attachments, are completely embedded in the tree. And here's another thing. This limb right here is about 12 inches in diameter, and that's got a cable down to a limb that is 26 inches in diameter. So if this limb does fail, that cable will end up being the part of the domino that pulls the rest of the tree apart. So, cables are good and bad at the same time. They can give you a sense of false security. So it is what it is. We're doing the best job we can on this old beauty, and they love the tree. They want to keep the tree, but we have to be honest. That's kind of interesting. It feels hard, but it's just on the surface. So this is very likely got a hollow underneath. I love working on these old trees, but sadly some of the stuff that you find and have to relay to the client just makes it kind of a problem. And if you look at the foliage overall, the tree appears to be pretty full. And there's a lot of healthy green foliage up there. But that is also something that's easily misunderstood. You can look at it and say, oh, it's got a lot of green leaves up there, it must be healthy. Well, health and structural stability are two entirely different things. Weaknesses in the structure of the tree, in the wood, can lead to failures where the outside active cambium tissue, albeit intact, is growing off of old decay pockets. Okay, next morning I'm checking out the tree. The tree is complete. Now the problem with an old tree like this is it's riddled with decay pockets, kind of like cancer. And even though there's a lot of foliage on the tree, and even though from a distance you can say that tree looks pretty good, you have to recognize that there's lots of spots in the tree that are weak and lots of areas that are likely to fail. Now I instructed the client to pay attention to areas, and I said if you see any areas that the foliage starts declining quickly, then we're going to have to get those limbs out of there. That means that there's too much decay. I also instructed them to pay very close attention to mushrooms, and that's mushrooms growing around the base of the tree, such as like in the Armillaria malea, which is also referred to as oak root fungus. But equally as important are the big growths, the big basidiocarps. They're like half shelf mushrooms that grow on the wood of the tree, because those are indicators. Now the problem with mushrooms are a lot of the mushrooms are very short-lived. They will come out usually after the rains, and then the fruiting bodies, or the mushrooms that you see, they'll pop up. There'll be big groupings of mushrooms all over, and within a week or so they all dissolve and go away, and you never knew they were even there. But you have to remember that the wood and the roots are food for some of these mushrooms, and if you see mushrooms, that's an indicator of decay or wood rot, and it could be a weakness that could cause the whole tree to fall down. Now when you've got a house next to a big tree like this, that's a real serious thing to pay attention to. So they love the tree, they want to keep the tree. I gave them their homework, and hopefully they will pay attention. I think they will.